Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People's Story. Let me start by saying that I never imagined I'd be the kind of person writing one of these stories. I've lurked on these forums for years, always thinking, wow, that would never happen to me. Well, I was wrong. Life has a funny way of throwing curveballs, and this one was a fastball straight to the face. It all started about 2 years ago when I received a call from a law firm I'd never heard of. They informed me that my great-uncle had passed away. I barely knew the man. We'd met maybe twice at family gatherings when I was a kid, and he always seemed like the quiet, reserved type who kept to himself. The lawyer explained that I was named as the sole beneficiary in his will. I was shocked, to say the least. I hadn't even known he'd died, and suddenly I was inheriting his estate. When the lawyer mentioned significant rural property, I assumed it was some small cabin in the woods or maybe a few acres of farmland. Nothing prepared me for what I was about to discover. After handling the paperwork and legal formalities, which took several months due to some complications with the estate tax assessment, I finally received the deed to the property. According to the documents, I now owned roughly 50 acres of land in a rural area about 2 hours from where I lived. The property had been in my family for generations, originally purchased by my great-grandfather as farmland. Life was busy with work and other responsibilities, so it took me another 3 months before I finally decided to go check out the property. I figured I should at least see what I owned before deciding whether to keep it, sell it, or do something else with it. I looked up the location on my GPS and set out one Saturday morning. As I drove, the landscape gradually changed from suburban sprawl to more rural settings. About 20 minutes from my destination, I started noticing signs for a development called Phase 1" and Phase 2. They looked like the typical upscale suburban community with fancy entrance signs and manicured landscaping. I didn't think much of it at the time. Following my GPS, I turned onto a newly paved road that led to what appeared to be Phase 3" of the same development. This is where things got weird. According to my GPS and the property maps I had, I should have been driving straight into undeveloped woodland. Instead, I found myself in a picture-perfect suburban street with large houses, perfectly trimmed lawns, and even a small playground area. I pulled over and double-checked my coordinates. This was definitely the right location. Yet instead of woods or fields, I was looking at about 30 homes arranged around a large cul-de-sac and along 2 connecting streets. At the entrance stood a sign announcing Phase 3, Welcome Home. This can't be right, I muttered to myself. I took out the survey map that had come with my inheritance paperwork and compared it to my GPS location. There was no mistake. These houses were built on my land. I sat in my car for a good 15 minutes, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Had there been some kind of colossal mistake? Did my great-uncle sell the land before he died and the records weren't updated? But that didn't make sense. The legal transfer had been thorough and recent. I decided to get more information. I drove around until I found what appeared to be a community center, or HOA office, a small but elegant building with a sign reading Community Association Management Office. When I walked in, a receptionist greeted me with a plastic smile. "Hi, I'm trying to understand something about this development," I said. "Who would I speak to about property boundaries and ownership?" "That would be our board president," she replied. "Do you live in the community?" "No, I believe I own the land this community is built on." Her smile faltered for just a second before she regained her composure. "I see. Let me call the president and see if she's available." 5 minutes later, I was introduced to a woman who I'll just call the HOA president. She was exactly what you'd expect. Expensively dressed, perfectly coiffed hair, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I understand you have some questions about our development?" she asked, gesturing for me to take a seat in her office. I explained my situation, showing her the deed and property maps I had brought with me. According to these documents, I recently inherited this land from my great-uncle, but somehow, there are houses built all over it. The president's demeanor changed instantly. The fake smile disappeared, replaced by a look of annoyance. "That's simply not possible," she said dismissively. "This land was properly acquired by the development company years ago. All the homes here are legally built and sold." I remained calm. "Could I see the documentation for that? Because my paperwork shows a clear chain of title from my great-grandfather through to my great-uncle, and now to me. There's no record of any sale." "I don't have time to go digging through ancient history," she snapped. "This development has been in progress for years. Phase 3 was completed 18 months ago. If there was an ownership issue, it would have come up long before now." "Well, it's coming up now," I replied. "My great-uncle passed away 2 years ago, and the estate has just finished going through probate. I'm the legal owner of this land." She stood up, signaling the end of our meeting. "Look, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is ridiculous. If you continue making these absurd claims, we'll have no choice but to consider it harassment. This land belongs to our community now. Whatever outdated paperwork you have is obviously incorrect." As I was being practically shoved out the door, she added, "And don't think about bothering our residents with this nonsense. They're hardworking people who've invested their life savings in these homes." I left the office feeling stunned and angry. The dismissive way she had treated me, without even bothering to look at my documentation, told me everything I needed to know. Something wasn't right, and I was determined to get to the bottom of it. The next day, I called a real estate attorney. After explaining my situation, I was quickly given an appointment. The attorney, a no-nonsense professional with 20 years of experience in property law, reviewed my documentation carefully. "These appear to be in order," he said after examining everything. "The chain of title is clear. If no sale was recorded and these documents are accurate, you likely do own the land. But we need to investigate further before making any claims or taking action." Over the next few weeks, my attorney commissioned a professional land survey and did a deep dive into the county records. What we found was shocking. The development company had indeed filed building permits and development plans, but they had used a different property description than what was in my deed. It appeared they had been working from an outdated and incorrect survey that shifted the boundary lines significantly. Whether this was intentional or a massive error wasn't immediately clear, but the result was the same. They had built 30 homes entirely on my property. My attorney also discovered something else disturbing. About 3 years ago, when my great-uncle was likely already in declining health, the development company had attempted to contact him about purchasing the land. There were records of certified letters being sent, but no response was ever recorded. Instead of taking the lack of response as a no and moving on, they apparently decided to proceed anyway, using the incorrect property lines as justification. Armed with this information and the new survey confirming my ownership, my attorney sent a formal letter to both the HOA and the development company outlining the situation and demanding an immediate response. The reaction was swift. Within days, I received a call from the development company's legal team requesting a meeting. My attorney advised me not to meet without him present, and we set up a conference at his office. The meeting was tense, to say the least. The development company sent their chief counsel and a vice president. The HOA president also attended, looking considerably less confident than during our first encounter. The development company's lawyer started with what I can only describe as a half-hearted attempt to maintain their position. "While we acknowledge there may be some discrepancy in the survey records, we believe we acted in good faith based on the information available to us at the time," he said smoothly. My attorney wasn't having it. Good faith would have involved ensuring you had clear title before building 30 homes. The property tax records alone would have shown you that the land was privately owned and taxes were being paid regularly by someone other than your company. The meeting continued for nearly 3 hours. As it progressed, their position gradually shifted from denial to damage control. They offered to purchase the land from me at fair market value for undeveloped rural property. "That's not going to work," my attorney responded before I could even react. "The land is no longer undeveloped rural property, is it? It now has 30 high-end homes on it, selling for upwards of $500,000 each. That's what we call developed property, and its value is significantly higher." The development company's representatives exchanged glances. The HOA president looked like she might faint. "What exactly are you proposing?" the company's lawyer asked cautiously. My attorney laid out our position. Either they would need to remove all structures from my property and restore the land to its original condition, or they would need to compensate me at current market value for the developed land, plus damages for the unauthorized use and environmental impact. The meeting ended with them asking for time to consider their options. As they filed out, the HOA president approached me. "You can't possibly expect people to lose their homes over this," she said, her voice a mixture of anger and fear. "I don't want anyone to lose their home," I replied honestly. "But I also don't expect to have my property stolen from me. The development company put those families in this position, not me." Over the next few months, negotiations continued while my attorney also prepared a lawsuit. The development company tried various tactics, including offering increasingly higher amounts for the land, though still well below its developed value, suggesting I was being greedy, and even implying they might countersue for some imagined offense. During this time, word got out to the homeowners. Some of them contacted me directly, ranging from hostile to desperate. I tried to be understanding, explaining that my issue was with the development company, not with them. Many of them began pressing the development company and the HOA for answers, adding another layer of pressure. About 6 months into the legal battle, we had our first court hearing on a motion filed by my attorney. The judge, after reviewing the evidence, made it clear which way she was leaning. Based on the documentation presented, there appears to be a significant likelihood that the plaintiff is indeed the rightful owner of the property in question, she stated. I strongly suggest the defendants consider their position carefully before we proceed to trial. This was the turning point. Within weeks, the development company came back with a serious settlement offer. They proposed a cash payment of $15 million, representing the current market value of the developed land plus a premium, coverage of all my legal expenses, a public acknowledgement of the error, creation of a fund to assist any homeowners who might face financial difficulties due to potential increases in HOA fees resulting from the settlement. After consulting with my attorney, I decided to accept the offer with one additional condition. The current HOA board would be required to resign and a new election held. Given that they had been complicit in misleading homeowners about the legitimacy of their properties, I felt this was important for the community moving forward. Surprisingly, the development company readily agreed to this condition, likely seeing it as an easy concession compared to the financial aspects of the settlement. The settlement was finalized just over a year after I first drove into that neighborhood. The development company made the payment, issued a carefully worded public statement about an unfortunate surveying error, and the HOA board, including the president, announced their resignations. What happened to the homeowners? They kept their homes, of course. The development company's insurance covered a significant portion of the settlement, and they absorbed the rest as a loss. The HOA fees did increase somewhat to cover additional insurance the community now needed, but the transition fund helped ease that burden. As for me, I suddenly found myself with $15 million in the bank, minus taxes and legal fees. It was life-changing money that I never expected to have. I invested most of it, donated a portion to organizations that fight predatory development practices, and kept enough liquid to finally buy a house of my own, though definitely not in that development. I did drive through the neighborhood one last time after everything was finalized. The houses were the same, the lawns still manicured, but there was a new board managing the HOA one elected with transparency as a core promise. As I passed the community center, I noticed the former HOA president loading boxes into her car. Our eyes met briefly, and I simply nodded. She quickly looked away. Sometimes I wonder what my great-uncle would think about all this. Would he be amused by the chaos his quiet piece of land caused? Would he be proud that I stood my ground? I like to think he knew exactly what he was doing when he left that land to me, a relative he barely knew but perhaps saw something in. The development company later went through a restructuring and several executives left. I heard through my attorney that the incorrect survey was not a simple mistake but had been intentionally commissioned when they couldn't reach my great-uncle. They had apparently assumed that an elderly property owner with no obvious heirs wouldn't be an obstacle for long. They were wrong. I've learned some valuable lessons from this experience. First, always know what you own and protect it. Second, don't underestimate the lengths some people will go to get what they want. And third, sometimes standing your ground isn't just about principle. It can also be incredibly rewarding. For anyone reading this who might be facing their own David versus Goliath situation with a development company, HOA, or other powerful entity, my advice is simple. Document everything, get expert help, and don't let yourself be intimidated. The law may work slowly, but it usually works. In the end, I didn't just get justice. I taught them all a valuable lesson about respecting property rights and due diligence. And yes, I definitely came out on top. The next one is a pro-revenge story. When I, 25F, was 3, my grandparents passed away. They set up a savings account in my name. The account was meant to be accessed by me when I was 21. At that point, it contained just over $300K. My grandparents left me a letter saying they would like me to share the money fairly with any other Smith-Jones children, meaning my full siblings, dad's a Smith, mom's a Jones. By fairly, they meant that they wanted me to assess the situation and judge for myself what was fair. I never had full siblings, but I have 2 half-brothers, Mac and Joe Smith, who are dad and stepmom's kids. Due to the specific wording my grandparents used, I legally never had to give Mac or Joe any money. However, I see Mac and Joe as my brothers, and as the money came from our grandparents, I felt that the fairest thing would be to assign each of us $100K, so we all got an equal-sized lump sum, and I figured that when Mac, the youngest, turned 21 and took his $100K, we could split any remaining money. When I turned 21, Dad suggested I buy a house with my $100K. I found a place I loved, but it was $130K, and I couldn't get a mortgage, so Dad said I should borrow $30K from the account. I did, figuring I could pay it back before my brothers turned 21, and I have been repaying it The account should be at 208K right now, but due to me withdrawing and then repaying that money, it's at 195K, so I still owe 13K. Joe turned 21 recently, and as I was giving him his 100K, Joe noticed that there was less in the account than there should be. I explained and said I was going to put it all back before Mac, now 19, turns 21. Joe told Mac, and both boys said I stole from them and owed them the full 13K back plus $3,000 of interest that they felt they would have gotten, and they wanted it all paid by this summer, which gave me less than 6 months to bring the account up to 211K. I said I'd do it, but over 2 years as planned. The boys then wrote up a contract to that effect. I went to sign it until I saw that it said 6 months to pay it all back. I wouldn't sign as we agreed on 2 years. They said I should figure it out as they were entitled to that money and would be seeking legal advice. Later that day, I got an email, clearly written by them, saying that they intend to sue me for the 16K plus whatever is currently in the account and additional damages and emotional distress on top of that. At this point in time, I'd given Joe about 50K of his 100K because he wanted it in installments. I responded that legally they were never entitled to any of it, and given their attitudes, I'd say they've already received an amount I deem fair, so that 50K was all they were getting. I then got a barrage of texts, calls, and emails yelling at me for going back on our deal. I blocked them. They then took to social media saying that I was trying to screw them out of their inheritance and rallying our extended family into harassing me over this, and it mostly worked as a lot of people messaged me. However, I got a message from this guy called Chris Smith. Chris said he was 27 and claimed to be my half-brother. I had never met him before, but he sent me photos of him as a kid with our dad, grandparents, and me. He showed me that he also had an account with 150K in it and a scan of a letter from our grandparents saying this money was meant to be shared fairly among Dad's illegitimate children. Chris also told me we have another half-sibling who is 18. He'd been looking for me for a while, but only found me when Dad shared Joe's post which had me tagged. We checked with a solicitor to make sure, and as the boys are legitimate, they aren't entitled to anything in Chris's illegitimate kid fund. And as they are my half-siblings, they aren't entitled to anything in my Smith-Jones Kids Fund either. I sent the boys a letter formally telling them to back off, stop posting about me online, and enjoy the 50K because it's all they're getting. The day they received the letter, Chris got a PM from Dad asking if the boys can have some of Chris's fund. Chris also said no and told Dad we'd met. I told Mac and Joe about Chris and our other half-sibling with Chris's permission. So it looks like my grandparents, knowing about Chris before they passed, set up 2 funds. One for the kids Dad had with my mother, who was still his wife when they passed, and one for children born out of Dad's affairs, presumably to make sure no one tried to screw anyone else over out of hurt feelings. I'm getting a lot of crap, but holding firm on my decision. The boys have realized that I won't back down on this, and it sounds like I've caused a schism at their house, as Joe has all the money and no intention of sharing, so Mac is now feeling twice as screwed, plus stepmom apparently did not know about the other half-siblings, or that my half-sister was born after she and Dad got married, and she's made Dad move into a hotel. It sounds like Dad is looking for a long-term living arrangement outside of the family home, because it looks like she is not letting him move back in. Dad is begging me to reconsider, but honestly, I'm done with all of them except Chris and my sister. The next one is a malicious compliances story. I work as an engineer for a company that assigns me to various client projects. For one such assignment, I was added to a project that wouldn't start for a few weeks, so in the meantime, I stayed focused on other ongoing work. A few days before the project was due to begin, the external project lead sent me a zip file containing technical documentation, diagrams, requirements, and other materials relevant to the upcoming project. I skimmed through it briefly, then moved on with my day. Nothing unusual. A couple of days later, I got an email from the external company's scheduling manager saying that a document had been sent to me which apparently contained some confidential company information and asking me to delete the email. That's it. No file name, no explanation, just a vague, please delete it. I shrugged, deleted the zip file, and replied asking if they could resend it without the problematic part. Then I forgot all about it. That is, until I got a call from the most condescending, passive-aggressive person I've ever dealt with, the scheduling manager from the client's side. She went on a 30-minute tirade about how the previous project lead never should have sent me that document, how serious the situation was, and most memorably, how she couldn't trust that I had actually deleted it. I quote, "I can't just take your word for it. I'm not just going to trust you because you say so." Right. So at that point I figured, I'm done with you. If you're going to act like I've just been handed nuclear launch codes, then I'll treat it like I've just been handed nuclear launch codes. I said, "You're absolutely right." I'll contact our security operations team and report a formal security incident. They can coordinate with your SecOps team, and together we can do a full scrub of all relevant mail servers to ensure the document is completely gone. It's really the only way to be certain. Suddenly, her entire tone changed. Oh, no, no, no. That won't be necessary. It's fine. I believe you. She practically stumbled over herself trying to shut it down. Because escalating this to both companies' SecOps teams would have turned it into a bureaucratic nightmare. Incident reports, compliance reviews, and probably someone getting thrown under the bus. I politely reiterated that I really didn't mind escalating it if it would give her peace of mind. She very quickly decided she had enough peace already. We ended the call, and life moved on. If you act like I've compromised national security, don't be shocked when I offer to treat it like a national security incident. The next one is an entitled people story. I moved to a new city a few weeks ago. Before moving in, I asked about the parking situation because I know how hard it can be to find a spot in the city. Luckily, my landlord still had an empty space right next to our building. Once they showed me which one was mine, I parked my bike there. Fast forward a few days. I came home from work and noticed someone had been parking their car in front of my bike during the day. I took a picture of the car just in case something happened. I had a feeling something was off. The next morning, I looked out the window after getting up and got lucky. The same car was about to park in front of my bike again. That alone could be reason enough to call the police, considering the fine for blocking a vehicle like that is pretty steep. But I was patient. I watched them park and planned to talk to them afterward. As I stood there, I saw the driver back right into my bike, push it slightly, and then roll forward again after I shouted at them just a "hey" out of nowhere for them. They finished parking, got out of the car, and immediately started berating me for parking my bike in their spot, asking why I would do that, saying they always parked there and there was no other space nearby for them. They even threatened to call the police. I was angry they had hit my bike, but I secretly hoped they would call the police because they would be the one fined for blocking my space. I contacted my landlord again, sent them the pictures I took of the car and told them who the person was, since they had told me exactly where they work, etc. They also confirmed that they never paid for the space, never signed a contract, nothing. Just someone who told them they could. The landlord reached out to them. From my first interaction with them, I had a feeling they might retaliate somehow. Sure enough, the next day I went out to my balcony and found a plastic bottle on the ground, along with a half-eaten strawberry. My bike seems to be fine though. I'm hoping for the best, and that it stays that way. I found the bottle and the strawberry last night. We'll see how petty they decide to get over the next few days. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.